Neighbours Godspeed, Jennifer here, and welcome to episode 20B of Sonnet Sisters, where we're going to go into an analysis of Shakespeare's sonnet number 20. Now this is a pretty important sonnet in the whole sequence, and it's gotten Shakespeare geeks all afluster for years because of the various questions of sexuality and gender that it raises. And the first time that I read this through, I came to the following conclusion. Can't think of a way at the moment, I know it's just the first reading, but I can't think of a way that I could read this as a woman and it hold the same weight. So I have invited the Demetrius to my Helena in East London Shakespeare Company's upcoming production of A Midsummer Night's Dream. It's at the end of November, come see it. Phillipe Bosher to come and be an honorary sonnet brother. Welcome, Phillipe.
Thanks, Jennifer, for having me.
What is your experience with Shakespeare? Are you as big a geek as me? And why do you like him so much?
I am a huge fan of Shakespeare. The first play I ever performed at university was a modern retelling of Romeo and Juliet, which was then followed by A Midsummer Night's Dream and Much Ado About Nothing. I think the reason that I like him so much is, to quote the folio, he was not of an age but for all time, and he wrote truthfully to the human condition rather than a specific general in Othello. It's a play about racism and about jealousy, which are political themes still prevalent even today.
Yeah, too true. Did you know anything about Sonnet 20 before doing this?
A little bit, but not much. I knew that it existed because it had to, because there are 154 of them.
That's right.
Yay!
154. I was just about to try and do the maths of how far we are through if we're doing Sonnet 20, but let's not think about that. A fifth, an eighth, maybe?
Just under an eighth.
Just under an eighth. Anyway.
Sonnet 20. A woman's face with nature's own hand painted hast thou, the master mistress of my passion. A woman's gentle heart, but not acquainted with shifting change, as is false women's fashion. An eye more bright than theirs, less false in rolling, gilding the object whereupon it gazeth. A man in hue, all hues in his controlling, much steals men's eyes and women's souls amazeth. And for a woman wert thou first created, till nature as she wrought thee fell a-doting, and by addition me of thee defeated, by adding one thing to my purpose, nothing. But since she pricked thee out for women's pleasure, mine be thy love, and thy love's use their treasure.
Beautifully read, Phillipe.
Thank you, Jennifer.
So I feel like the general sense and meaning of the sonnet comes across, but like I say, in a very sort of general, rough kind of way. When you first read it through, you summed it up as?
A love sonnet to a man.
I really, really like that your first reaction to this sonnet after reading it was this.
It seems to me a love sonnet, I suppose, of sorts.
Of sorts.
Yeah.
Of sorts. What that amused me because I'm like, yeah, too right, mate. It is a love sonnet of sorts.
I think, if I can cast my mind back that far, it was the love that I read in this poem is one that's a deep friendship love, the sort of thing that you see hyperbolized, I suppose, by drunk people or by people who are extremely depressed and sad. They want their closest friends to know that they love them. It's the difference between a poem that is in love with someone and a poem that loves someone.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think I might be one of those people you listed because I tell everyone I love them all the time.
The subject is a feminine man, I suppose, an effeminate rather. But the thing is that Shakespeare says that this subject is the master and mistress of my passions.
Now, there's already a lot going on in these first two lines.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit of a clue or a smidge of what is about to open up in the rest of the poem within the first line. So that phrase, own hand painted, nature's own hand painted, is potentially a slight against womankind. It is suggesting that women paint their faces, and this guy is painted with nature's own hand, so it's natural. He's got his normal, natural face as nature intended. Okay. So it's the first idea that there's something false about women. But only once you've read the whole thing through. When you read it on first, when you first get to that first line, it doesn't necessarily mean that.
No, it sounds like nature, who is the creator of everything, men and women, the natural world alike, has sculpted you. It is God creating Adam and Eve. It is nature choosing, okay, this is the one I'm going to spend my time on. And then how about the master mistress part of the sonnet? I'm now cheating because we've discussed this. But I always found it really interesting, the fact that he puts these two gendered titles next to each other. The first thing that would come to my mind is this idea that the subject is the best mistress, the master of all mistresses of his passion, of the sonnet writer's passion. So it is someone who has complete control over the writer's passion.
And passion as well, having potentially several different meanings, because I see passion, and again on first read through I saw passion as being like
sexual.
I was about to go whoa. But passion can mean sexual, or just something you feel very strongly about and feel very emotionally connected to, as well as the interpretation that we use when we talk about the passion of Christ being his suffering. So it's a potential double meaning there in that he feels passionate about this guy, but there's also an element of suffering going on.
So because the sonnet writer can't express himself, he is experiencing a emotional crucifixion?
Yeah, let's go with that.
Let's go with that. Okay, cool. So 2 lines in, we're getting some pretty deep stuff here with Shakespeare.
The subject is sweet and charming and kind, but not like women who, according to the writer, are susceptible to quick changes and quick changes of mood. Shakespeare says that the women roll their eyes too much, and that this subject has a brighter eye and doesn't so often.
How dare you? Nonsense. We do not do that. Thank you very much. It's women's fashion. Okay, shut up. Let's just move on. Potential slight against women number 2, which actually harkens back to something that was said in Sonnet 18. Shifting change is not just referring to the emotions in a woman being changeable, although that is certainly one interpretation. Another is the amount that women would have to change their clothes, especially when they're menstruating, which was something sort of briefly mentioned in Sonnet 8. You're right there, Phillipe.
I'm extremely comfortable right now.
Should I say that word again? Menstruating.
I mean, it has the word men in it, so it's great.
I mean, that's a must. That's me putting words very much into Shakespeare's mouth, or into the speaker's mouth. And then not acquainted is really fun in that it is another slight, but it's a fun one because it's super rude.
Is it a sex joke?
It's a sex swear.
Yeah. Oh, hello.
So the word quaint is a word that is used for lady bits in the same way that we use the C word that I'm not going to say on this programme in case any school kids are watching. So not acquainted is saying you don't have a quaint.
Oh, hello. It's true.
Slight number 4. Is it 4 or 3? I don't know. But they're mounting up.
They are. They're definitely. They're totaling. Let's be honest.
Is like Medusa, I suppose, but a golden Medusa rather than a stone Medusa, wherein everything the subject looks at is gilded, is made gold.
I really like that you went for Medusa and not Midas in that one.
I think it's probably because I have a really great understanding of all classical folklore and myth, and it's probably one that you wouldn't understand. Or I was very tired and forgot that Midas exists. No, I think what it is the fact that he says, gilding the object whereupon it gazeth. So the story of Medusa is the story of a woman with snakes for hair who looked at things and turned them to stone. And so that is a purely negative tale. That is an evil horror turning things to stone. Whereas the idea of Midas is a parable, a fable about the perils of receiving what you wish for. So it is a negative spin on a positive. So the Medusa story is a complete contrast, a complete juxtaposition to this idea of someone being so beautiful whose eyes and gaze is so glorious that it turns things to gold. There's a really nice juxtaposition between those two, whereas Midas is a much more nuanced and dark fable.
It also makes sense, actually, that you did go for, as much as I tease you, it does make sense that you went for Medusa because, as you say, it is to do with the eyes.
Yeah.
And it was interesting looking up how people viewed, how they thought eyes worked, like the science of the day, because people genuinely thought that like beams came out of people's eyes when you looked around at things. I guess like on some superhero film where you've got like, you can see these beams coming out and obviously
like
they couldn't see them. Yeah, sure.
This man, this beautiful man has all colours, all hues available to him. I suppose he can wear anything he likes because everything suits him.
I love that interpretation. I had not even considered that, and it makes total sense.
But the thing that still doesn't entirely make sense to me, so a man in hue, all hues in his controlling, what does he mean by a man in hue?
It seems that the word hue at the time also meant appearance. So a man in appearance, you look like a man, all hues in your controlling, so all people who look at you, that's how I interpreted that, all looks, if you say it looks like a man in looks, all looks of other people in your controlling, so everyone that you walk past turns to look at you.
But this idea of hue appears quite a lot in the sonnet, right?
Yeah, there is a suggestion from some people that the person Shakespeare, the speaker, is in love with is somebody whose surname was Hughes, Hews.
Okay.
And I think Hughes was also spelt like that originally at the time. So in the quarto version, it's not spelled Hues, it's spelled Hews. And the letters H, E, W, and S actually appear in 10 out of the 14 lines. And there's a suggestion that that is deliberate wordplay or like a hidden coded message that is like, I love Hughes. And like, I don't know how much I go with that. It's a fun idea, but...
Yeah. Well, it's also, it reappears, that idea, in popular culture because the portrait of Mr. W.H. is a short story by Oscar Wilde, obviously written 400 or so years later, but this idea seems to keep coming up that maybe it is someone called Hugh to whom Shakespeare is referring.
Can you crack the code? What do you think?
Call us on 0800 Mr. William Hughes. Sorry, Mr. Will Hughes.